Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Pelvis. I'm Laura Haraka, a somatic practitioner, breathwork facilitator, and someone who's been on the healing journey myself. I know what it's like to live with chronic symptoms and feel disconnected from your body, and I also know how powerful it can be when we start to listen, slow down, and heal from the inside out. On this podcast, we talk about the mind-body connection, nervous system healing, pelvic health, and all the messy, beautiful layers that come within learning to trust your body again. Whether you're brand new to this work or deep in your process, I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Pelvis. So for many living with chronic symptoms, joy can feel out of reach. But my guest today, Simone Holderbach, believes healing isn't just about reducing pain. It's about reconnecting with what makes you feel alive. Simone is a manual therapist, neuroplastic symptom recovery coach, and founder of Mind Body Joy, a community helping people bring playfulness, creativity, and connection back into their healing journey. With 14 years of experience and a personal connection to chronic symptoms, she blends neuroscience, emotional awareness, and nervous system re-education to show that joy can be a powerful part of recovery. Welcome to the podcast, Simone.
Thank you so much, Laura, for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Me too.
So
joy is what we want to talk about.
Joy is what we want to talk about. And
Yes.
Our conversations have been really joyful. Simone and I met over LinkedIn, and we've had some really nice conversations. So I said, let's get her on this podcast. I love what she's doing with Joy. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, how I found joy back, because I've lost it for the better of 2 decades myself, which is why this is so important to me. I'm a manual therapist. I am a massage therapist by license, have not given a massage in over a decade, I think, would probably suck at it right now. But I loved doing it in the beginning because it was just so, I had little kids at home. Loved going to my treatment room with the birds and the flutes and the relaxation songs. And it was just flowing. It was very meditative. I loved that people who came to see me left feeling better. That was my mission. And that still is my mission in life. That being said, it started to frustrate me quite quickly when the next time, like a week later, 2 weeks later, they'd come back. And when I'd ask, like, what would you like to work on today? It's like, that's in my neck, or that same, it's my low back as usual. And I was like, there's got to be a better way than just kind of like, improving the felt sense a little bit for a little while. And so that started my journey down the rabbit hole. Got hooked by watching Laura Mosley's Why Things Hurt TED Talk. I remember that vividly. That was one of my first aha moments of like, there's more than just the tissues when it comes to pain and, tension and tightness, because it's not all pain, right? And so I started attending many, many trainings. I started with neuromuscular reprogramming, certified in neurokinetic therapy. Once I, went through all those levels, I continued with what I still practice today, which is an applied form of neurology, functional neurology. It's called proprioceptive deep tendon reflex, PDTR. It does not roll off the tongue easily. The person who developed is an orthopedic surgeon, not a marketing person, clearly. Otherwise, he would have chosen a different name. But what this approach does is it's kind of like a bottom-up approach where we look for what actually is at the source of dysfunction. Because as we know, muscles are tight because there's a reason, because the brain instructs them to. And so oftentimes this is a result of lived experience, right? It's like patterns that are held in the body. And oftentimes it's nerve receptors that got triggered at some point and that are still signaling too much And so the brain receives information from an area that had previously had an issue, but the tissues have long healed, but it's still a problem, but there isn't a problem. So this proprioceptive deep tendon treatment finds the signal that is just too much and resets the neural pathways. So the brain receives better information and can create a better output based on cleaner information. So this is kind of like the bottom-up approach. And when I learned about pain reprocessing therapy, I was like, my gosh, this is exactly the same thing, but from the top down. Here we don't clean up the incoming information. We teach the brain that the incoming information is faulty, or it's kind of like a remnant. It's an echo of something that, happened a long time ago. But we retrain the brain by how it responds to it. And we treat it that way. And for me, those two together make so much sense, right? Because like one, I treat on the body, but it is the brain that I'm treating.
Right.
And oftentimes, I combine both because I just can now that I know all of these things. And I only see clients in person 1 day a week. The other time I work as a chronic symptom recovery coach and do that remotely in German and English. And sorry, I'm like rambling away.
No, this is so interesting to me. So you got into this work because you were a massage therapist
Yes.
and realized people kept coming back with the same chronic symptoms.
Yes.
Really
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. And, today I see massage therapy or acupuncture like as really nice treatment modalities, right? And by any means, if you who listens loves getting massages, please keep getting massages because it's good for you. It's touch. It soothes the nervous system. It rarely takes care of an underlying problem. And if it does, it is probably more likely because your nervous system actually calmed down, brain felt safe, and let go of a pattern. But that digging in and deep tissue work, working out the knots and all that, that's not how human physiology works. And there's a lot of myths out there. And to me, it's all nervous system work, right?
A lot of people think we should stop all physical modalities, but the way I look at it is, obviously our brains and our bodies are connected.
Yeah.
And when we do something like massage, it can just even signal to those muscles it's safe to let go. It might not be the root cause of what
Absolutely.
started it.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm a big proponent of still, like getting all the modality, using all the modalities that make sense for you, that you enjoy, that make you feel better. And touch, right, is such an essential human need. And not just touch, it could be, just a movement practice. Moving is so healing, really. It's movement is medicine. And people should be doing it. Sometimes it can be, I'm like a science nerd and I want people to know what is happening really and why is this working, why is it not working. So I have to pull myself back oftentimes where I'm like, it doesn't really matter. All I care is that this person is feeling better. And like they're doing all the right things. And if they swear that their massage therapist like makes them feel better and gets that problem under control, I'm all for it, right? But yeah, I nowadays, like for longer standing problems or wider spread, neuroplastic symptoms, I just think it's a great adjunct and definitely can be the first step toward nervous system safety because
Exactly.
people might not feel ready to even allow the notion that there is something from when they were a child or from like a trauma that they've experienced that might be because they might not be ready for that, right? And so manual work or physical applications can be a really nice first step of building that safety, creating rapport, then starting the information sharing about, have you ever thought about that? And when the symptoms started, what was going on in your life? When I first started training in PRT and neuroplastic modalities, I just wanted to like share the information with all of my manual therapy clients. At the time, I wasn't coaching yet. And I did the fire hose model. It's like, here's all the information that I just learned. It's so exciting. And people were just glazing over. So it's really so important how we portion the information, how, like how we can make this digestible and accessible, because it's never going to work if we are trying to sell something onto someone or convince somebody of something. It has to resonate and people have to be ready for it. That's my experience. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. There was a few years where I would take some courses about the mind body connection before I got better, trying to learn for myself, and I was not ready.
Yeah.
I said, "What are these people going to tell me? My pain isn't real?" And that's not what they were saying, obviously,
Oh,
but I just wasn't ready. And
yeah.
sometimes it's too much to take in.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
when you're in chronic pain or you're living with chronic symptoms, right? You've got so much on your plate. It can be hard to just get through the day. And then taking on a new concept of, oh my gosh, there could be a new way out of this when you've been through so many disappointments before, right? And you've seen so many specialists and you've tried all the things that can feel like, like, leave me alone. Yeah, whatever,
Right.
whatever you
Yes.
say, but it's not really landing. And so I think sometimes it's totally fine that people take their time. And, I see it as like dropping in a pebble and I leave it at that. I remember one client of mine, she had what I think was so many neuroplastic symptoms, but she was very, very married to all of her diagnoses. And
Mhm.
she'd seen so many specialists. She had many different things going on, but all kind of mold sensitivities and chemical sensitivities, plus structural diagnoses. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, like this would really help you. And I tried to share the information with her about what we now know about how over 80% of structural things are not, symptoms are not structural or physical in nature. And she interrupted me and she said, Simone, I come to you for PDTR, not to be healed with words. And
Yeah.
to me, it was like a shock at first, but then it was a learning experience too, because I realized, yeah, she clearly was not ready and I need to respect that. And that changed my approach because like I really gauge where people are at. I share a lot of information like in form of resources versus the fire hose model of
Mhm.
talking to them in session. And then if they are curious, they will get back to me and they'll, ask more questions. And then I'm happy to, expand on that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because it took me so long to buy into this world.
Hmm.
I think I am extra patient and compassionate with people
Yes.
and understanding that they're not there yet. So let's just give them a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't have to convince them all in one session
No,
at all.
absolutely. And there's so many tools that we can utilize versus like, the pain and neuroscience education, right? It's like so many nervous system regulation tools. I love everything that you share. I love your posts. I love your daily little like check-ins and little techniques and drops of tips. And it's so well done and it's so actionable and usable. I hope everybody watches those. I just like these things, whatever the modality is that somebody's practicing, you can send people home with those and they can apply them. And that's what might make them feel better. They'll attribute it to something else, but that who cares as
Right.
long as they feel better. But there's so many things that so many building blocks that we can use toward like nervous system safety and like once the nervous system feels safe, there's like the resistance drops, right?
Mhm.
And information can come in, the possibilities can come in, and the
Let's
brain,
face it, the possibilities are endless
yeah,
because it's not just about helping them heal from chronic pain. I don't know about you, but my whole entire life changed.
yeah,
I'm much more present. I'm calmer.
I react to the world and respond to the world so differently
Yeah.
due to this work.
It's life-changing work, right? We start with symptom focus.
Mhm.
And then it kind of, again, that's also like the drop, that's the little pebble that drops in, right? And then we start from there, and then, it just ripples out and it touches all aspects of our lives. And I think about, yeah, it changes like the life for better and like enhances the quality of life tremendously.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So, you got into this due to your work, and I'm just wondering if you've had any of your own experience with chronic pain.
Yeah, so I am lucky. I'm one of the few lucky ones that has not had really severe chronic issues going on in my life. I've been pretty healthy. I cannot say the same for my two boys, unfortunately. My youngest son, who's now already almost 17, was diagnosed with Crohn's disease as a
Mm.
baby. Like his body started attacking itself, like after receiving antibiotics for an ear infection at 9 months old. And he had his first colonoscopy at 13 months and then got his diagnosis of Crohn's disease. That, of course, is an autoimmune disease, right? Which is not what we are treating with this work. But what I've learned over the years is that his symptom behavior does not mesh or does not really go with necessarily how his IBD presents. For example, we've had numerous occasions where he would be in excruciating pain and, could not walk, could not, like, just bent over and doubled over in pain. And I would, call his gastroenterologist and he would be like, yeah, let's do a colonoscopy. Let's take a look of what's going on. Right. And we would do that. And I was like sitting there in the surgical suite waiting for him to come out. And they come out and said, it actually looks pretty good. And I was like,
Wow.
it's these moments where you think, that's great, but, and back then I didn't have an explanation. Over the years, as I've seen it over and over again, I've come to the realization that a lot of time when he has his worst symptoms, it is actually IBS that's causing those. So he has IBS on top of IBD, which is Crohn's disease,
Mhm.
but it's the IBS that's stress driven
Mm.
that actually causes the symptoms to flare. And that's different from a Crohn's flare because he's had those too, but those you can measure, in like blood markers and you can see in a colonoscopy. But
Mhm.
those where he felt the worst were typically driven by stressors in school, stressors that he was not aware of because knowing what I know, of course, I'm like, is there anything going on in school? And he's like, no, no, I'm fine. Everything's good. And he's a good student. So I took his word for it. And I remember one morning that was not too, maybe 3 years ago or so, he could not go to school. And he's missed a lot of school from his illness. But he was like, oh, it's 10 out of 10. I can't walk. I can't get up. And later in the afternoon, I came to his room to check on him. He was on his phone and he, in that moment, got a message with a grade from a test he had had 2 days ago. And he said, oh, I got an A. And will you believe it? 20 minutes later, the 10 out of 10 pain was gone.
My God.
And so and it's one thing when you are the one suffering and you know all about that, but then you can take steps and you know how it changes things inside of you and whether things
Mhm.
get better or worse. When you're just observing as a mom, that's extra hard. First of all, when they're little, and it doesn't really change, even when they're not so
Mhm.
little anymore, but you can't make them do anything. So I get eye rolls when I said like, hey, why don't you start some like breathing exercises? It's like,
Right.
does not land well with them. But I've also come to realize, I can only offer so much and I need to let them have their experience. And with my older son, I learned that it's an age thing and a maturity thing as well, because he actually was diagnosed with celiac disease when he was
Mm.
15. And at first we were nervous that he was also having IBD and we were thrilled that it was just celiac and we could just cut out gluten and it
Mhm.
would all be good from there. Yeah, except he did not get better from cutting out gluten. He got worse and worse and worse. He slipped into a depression. He was hiding in his room and just,
Hmm.
in bed all the time to rest because he felt so weak. And COVID happened, and I was like, thank goodness, this timing is perfect. That way he can stay in bed, rest some more. Oh my gosh, I was like a fool, right? Because
Right.
I now know that that is the worst that you can do, because if you like give into these avoidance behaviors, the brain learns, oh my gosh, this really must be bad.
Hmm.
And so the symptoms increased, and they increased so much that, he got developed sensitivity to pretty much any food.
Hmm.
And he was down to eating rice cakes, these puffed rice cakes
Yeah.
with a smear of almond butter and sliced bananas. That was all he ate for months. And he was just wasting away. And it was so heartbreaking because like I could see like, the light dim, and it was terrible. We did all the traditional, Western things like we did pain clinic, and they were good. They tried, with some cognitive behavioral therapy, but I don't know, it didn't land. They said, a routine is important. We tried walking. He made it to the mailbox, and then he was like, Mom, I need to lie down again.
Oh, wow.
And it escalated to the point where even drinking a glass of water would cause incredible abdominal pain for him. And that's where I realized, working with nerve receptors in my proprioceptive deep tendon reflex, right? We
Hmm.
have stretch receptors all over our body. And so what happened was that drinking water would stretch the wall in the lining of his stomach. The
Hmm.
brain would receive that information of that change. And because it was a vulnerable area, the brain was like, oh, something's going on. Better turn the volume up and make sure that, he stays in bed and rests up. And so that was kind of what was going on. And what brought the breakthrough was that we went on vacation, because I knew he needed to leave his room. But at
Hmm.
home, he wouldn't do it because he
Hmm.
was just so exhausted and in such bad shape. And so we went on vacation where he naturally actually wanted to leave the room and the
Hmm.
bed and explore. And that's what brought the shift.
Wow. So the mind body world, you might have not had chronic pain symptom,
Yeah.
but it was directly happening in your family,
Yeah.
which is sometimes harder, right? When it's
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
own children. But it's so interesting because what I've found, and I'm sure you obviously just said it too, when we have a part of our body that's struggling, where the Crohn's is or the celiac, the brain is so interesting and tricky, right? It sends symptoms to that part of the body
Mhm.
because it's the part of the body that's a little more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then we could think, "Oh, it must be physical."
Exactly. Oh, so we think it's vulnerable, right? Is that endless
Exactly.
feedback loop, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And that's why I'm so passionate about this topic, because I've seen it firsthand how this whole neuroplasticity concept played out with both of my boys, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I combined it with what I already did, and then added on training, and really kind of like work from both sides of the coin, as I call it now, right? And
Right.
it makes so much sense. And when I just said that with sorry, my camera is kind of zooming in and out weirdly. When you just said that with, sorry, lost my train of thought. When I just said that what brought the change was, like the change of scenery and going on vacation, and that brought the change, that reminded me of your podcast that you did with Dr. Clark, like the story behind the symptoms, where you shared the story of you dancing down the
Yeah.
hallway, and
Mhm.
that when your therapist started to dance, that kind of shifted things for you. And when you started practicing that dance,
Mhm.
that shifted things even further. And that when I listened to that, I got goosebumps, because I was like, yes, that's exactly right. Like you added something different back into your everything that you tried. Instead of symptom focus, you
Right.
kind of like widened your You cast a wider net and you tried something that you didn't even think was treatment, but it was the most
Yeah.
powerful one.
So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
So I have a membership that I teach now, the
Mhm.
Pelvic Healing Circle, and where we come on live calls every week. And I teach a mind body tool, I teach a somatic tool, and some breath works. But one of the things I always say is the number one component from healing from chronic pain is bringing in joy. You, I know, agree with me so much to the fact that you're creating a whole membership on that. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I would love to. It's still like a pre-launch. We're launching on
Mhm.
October 15th. But what brought that, in my work with clients, I've often heard the same response. We would like get to a point where they started feeling better when I would start suggesting that they add things back into their lives that make them feel good, that are fun, that are playful, that bring them joy. And most of them at this point, like just stared at me and would say, I don't even know anymore what brings me joy. I don't know who I am without these symptoms. I've had them for so long. And that broke my heart every single time. And some random Thursday morning this March, I was sitting on my couch and I was, as I usually am, thinking about chronic symptoms and chronic pain. And I was like, that thought dropped into my mind, thinking, what we need is not more chronic pain, we need more chronic joy.
Mhm.
And I really loved that expression, chronic joy. And then I started to think about how we could make that happen. And from that moment, that idea was born. I call the community Mind Body Joy because it combines all of the mind body techniques. We consist of a mind and a body and adds the joy component to it. And it is, because I'm a science girl, I call it the neuroplasticity of joy, because
Mhm.
just as with any other skills that we learn for people who have been navigating chronic symptoms for a longer time, joy seems like unattainable. It's
Mhm.
so far away. When life feels heavy, lightness is what they crave, but have no idea how to even
Mhm.
get there, right? And so my idea was to like build a community where, together with others who are in the same boat, so this My Body Joy community is dedicated to people with chronic symptoms. So not for the general population, just for people who are struggling, but it's not symptom focused. Like that is
Right.
like one of the important factors. This is not another community where we talk about what's been going on and how bad things are, right? Because there's so many communities for that and they're all valuable and you can find support and information. But those can often also be dark places where, tips that others give you can feel heavy because you just feel so exhausted from having tried everything and now you should try that. And of course you will because you want to get better, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so this is kind of like the antidote to that approach. It's a community where when you enter, we first want a new member help to find their play personality. So joy is the destination, playfulness and play is the vehicle to get
Tell me
there.
a little bit more about that, our play personality. What does that mean?
So there is actually the National Institute for Play. And Dr. Stuart Brown, he's a psychiatrist, he has developed 8 play personalities. And what that
Mhm.
means is, when I say play, people might think, oh, I'm not a playful person. I hate board games. That's me, for
Mhm.
example. Board games is not my kind of play. But those 8 different types of play personalities, right? There is the person who finds joy in movement. That's the kinesthete. There might be another person who is feeling playful when they're exploring new things, when they're
Mhm.
like learning new things, engaging in new activities, trying out new restaurants. That's the explorer. There are people for whom it is play to put together a themed dinner party, you know, they're the director type. There are people who love collecting things, and that's the collector. So play has so many different
Yeah.
faces. And by figuring out what comes naturally to you, we can help you trying out little tiny joy experiments that are geared toward your natural play personality. And so that's kind of like the first step is taking this quiz, and then you're welcomed in and you receive like personalized, just a few little things to try out.
So fun. Yeah.
Then at the heart of it is the joy forum. That's where we share our wins, our little like what our joy quests, what we tried. Every Monday we have new prompts for what to try that week.
Mhm.
And when you've not really been playful or joyful for a long time, it's very likely that your brain will resist. It might feel silly, awkward, not fun, and that is to be expected, right? The brain loves familiarity. And right now, it's familiar with symptoms, it's familiar with symptom focus, and it thinks that's what you should be focusing on to stay safe. So it will take experimentation, curiosity, and the willingness to repeat things to
Mhm.
to start that neuroplasticity of joy, right? But we know we can change the brain in so many different ways.
Mhm.
So here we use joy and lightness and ease and positivity to change it in that direction, to balance out the heaviness of healing work. So it kind of like, joy is not the end goal once someone has healed. It's actually the catalyst. It's the path to healing. And that's like what I want to get across. Joy is medicine. It's really an important factor of getting better. And that's what you
Absolutely.
said, right? Yeah.
Yeah, joy is the number one component. And, we can implement joy slowly and easily
Yeah.
because, like you said, the brain thrives on familiarity. So when we bring in too much, that can feel dangerous. But joy could be as simple as a cup of tea with a friend, a phone call to an old college roommate. It could be just going outside and putting your feet in the ground and watching the birds. We don't have to take a 6-week art course. Now,
No,
we
no,
can, but that might seem too
too much.
overwhelming to
Yes,
someone, you know?
absolutely.
And I want to actually add too that I think joy works best with intention. And the reason I say that is because when I first didn't feel well in 2015, I don't remember who I used, but they had told me you need to go for massages. And massages are fun. To be honest with you, I didn't get any better. And I'm going to tell you why. Massages weren't fun for me at the time.
Yeah.
I was a very anxious person. So
Mm.
to sit there and get a massage was awful. Now, I would love a massage, but then I was going to the massages with the intention of, I got to go for this massage appointment. So we want to really bring in things that we really do love to do. And even though dancing and making soup, for those of you that have heard my story, were two of the main types of joy that helped me heal. That doesn't mean that's the right type of joy for you. So, you have to definitely be intentional with it. And
Yeah.
I'll share with you one other thing. I don't know if you remember, but I went to Denmark in
The
April.
summer. Oh, this was
Yeah,
sweet. Yeah.
April, May. Yeah. And I did a little research about Copenhagen when I was there and how many people are in pain and things like that. And I was so interested in their culture. And I went somewhere in Denmark called the Happiness Museum.
What did they
And
what did they have on display there?
well, there was a whole room of Post-it notes
Uh-huh.
there where anyone visiting this museum, I was layered in them, could write down what made them happy. And just being in that room, the energy in that room was amazing. And there was also, you would love it because there was a component of neuroscience in there.
Mhm.
They gave facts, and I'm taking pictures of every single fact as it came up. There was little experiments, and it was so nice. And I learned a lot about the culture, and people just took a blanket after work, and their workday was shorter than ours, and just hung out in these parks, by castles, in green areas, and I'm like, "Wow, they know how to do this over here," you know?
Yeah, Denmark ranks number 1 in life happiness, I think,
Yeah,
consistently. So they
yeah.
are onto something there, I bet. That sounds amazing.
It was, and so I love the fact that you're doing this because joy is something that I have brought into my life whenever I can get small little times. Like even after our interview today, I have a small gap before my next client, and I'm going to say to myself, what would my body like to do? And
Oh,
maybe it's raining here in New Jersey, but it might just be sit, lay down, look at the birds outside on my bird feeder. It doesn't have to be big things.
no, and like you said, it's so true. Like you need to start small because
Yeah.
everybody thinks like joy or fun is kind of like the Ferris Bueller day off kind of thing.
Right.
No, it's the opposite. Like you want to make it doable. You want to make joy
Yeah.
doable. And for me, like with like my kid stuff for many, many years, I was just emotionally numb. I kind of
Mhm.
like, I managed it all. I didn't freak out, but I lost like that joyfulness. And
Yeah.
it was one of my deepest desires to get that back. And like what the first spark literally that brought me back was I started an early morning ritual that when I came downstairs for the first time, I lit a candle and just started and watched like how the flame starts and flicker for a couple of moments. And to this day, every single time it relaxes my facial muscles, it puts
Yeah.
a little smile on my face. And it's a tiny shift, right? It's not like this is joy, but it is joy. It is
Yeah.
joy in its tiniest first step. And by repeating that, I made my nervous system more to little bigger joys and a little bigger joys until eventually now I'm just kind of like very in the moment, and like I really notice so many things that bring me joy that
Right.
but that was the first step, right? And because it can be so tricky for someone who has not done it for a while, I've created a I call it the 12-week reboot. It's not a course. It's
Mhm.
but it is a guide for those who like a little bit more structure in the beginning in the community to follow along. Each week has a theme. For example, the first week's theme is being good is overrated, right? So each
Mhm.
week has a little topic, and then it has a one anchor joy experiment to try out for the week. And then the next week, the new chapter unlocks and you can kind of like go along. It doesn't unlock before then because it needs to be practiced, right? It's not about reading the chapter and then moving on to the next. We want to practice those little joy experiments. Another thing that we offer in Mind Body Joy is weekly live Zooms, creative expression, art. That's also healing for the nervous system. And it can bring you into the moment in like a moment with yourself where you just play with color. So we have Brenda Laux Johnson. She's an amazing artist. She's going to host a creativity hour where she is going to guide people through just like experiments with drawing or art, different medium. Then I have a yoga therapist, Sonia Wyrick, who is combining laughter yoga and
Ah.
nidra for
Mhm.
like nervous system like activation in like a positive way with
Mhm.
laughter yoga, and then calming it down and just enveloping yourself in this like cozy blanket with yoga nidra. And another one that is an really fun connection game where you answer questions, and it's
Mhm.
again played in a small group like of max 5 people, I think, or 6 people. And you really get to know the other people better, not just, in the forum.
Mhm.
Because like for me, it's about the community and about cheering each other on and like really sharing what worked for me. So maybe somebody who reads it was like, oh, I have that item in my house. I never really even noticed it, but it is actually really cool. And they notice it. And, it just like shifts the focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I really think there's something important about healing in community
Yeah.
and feeling the support. That's why I created my own membership, the Pelvic
Yeah.
Healing Circle,
Yeah.
so that people could heal in community, feel supported. And it's one of the things with you, I don't, or I ask people not to talk about their symptoms. This
Yes.
is more about teaching somatics and breath work
Yes.
and finding pieces of joy, right? Because it
Yes.
really is one of the most important parts of healing from chronic pain.
Absolutely. And I love that you started that community because it's just lonely
Yeah,
when you are dealing with symptoms and you're trying to figure it out. And even if you're a member in online communities that have the same problem, nobody has exactly the same problem, but people
right,
chase to find that other person who has exactly the same symptom presentation, right? And then we want to know, how did they do it? How did
right.
they get better? And this is like such a single focus and lonely experience that when you open that up to a community of people in the same boat healing together, that is beautiful. I'm so glad that you're doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I think it's amazing. So I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I hope
It
it's
is.
going to
It
take
is
off and
amazing.
everybody's going to love it. Yeah, right now we are like in the pre-launch state, like I said in the beginning. Doors open on October 15th, but if anybody is interested in getting on like the wait list or being notified of like a soft launch where I invite a few people to come play a little earlier than others, please visit www.community.mindbodyjoy.org, and there you can get notified once a door is open. There's a free 2-week trial for everyone. So people can,
Oh,
just check it out, see if it resonates, because I think it's important that you feel at home somewhere, right? I want people to be able to try all the components, see if it makes sense for them, if it's the right time for them, and just give them an opportunity to check it out.
that is such a great idea. Really nice. So those links will also be
Okay.
in the show notes,
Thank
without
you.
a doubt. And I'm kind of curious if there's, one last thought you'd like to leave our listeners with. What would it be?
It would probably be to really consider the power of positive thoughts, positive actions, lightness and ease, and joy, even though as you see them and think of them right now, it might feel so out of reach. But starting small is possible at any stage because we do not want joy and kind of like instead of pain or symptoms, we want to start by creating joy alongside symptoms. That is the first step. And you can start at any stage you're at, that, there's always something that you can try to just put that little glimmer and that little spark back that reminds you of what makes you feel alive, what used to make you feel alive, and what you really would like to get back to.
Fantastic advice. Just pick one little thing and start small.
Exactly. You're so right
Exactly.
about that.
Well, Simone, it was so nice to have you on the podcast today, and you provided our listeners with such great information. And like I said, joy is something that I bring into my life every day. So I'm hoping when we get off, we both choose one thing to do for ourselves today to bring us joy.
For sure. Thank you so much, Laura. It was a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Beyond the Pelvis. If today's episode resonated with you, I invite you to join us inside the Pelvic Healing Circle, a supportive space for deeper healing, connection, and transformation. And if you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you took a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your words help others find this podcast and remind them that healing is possible. Until next time, stay connected to your body, trust your inner wisdom, and keep going beyond the pelvis.